Welcome back to the Down channel. Thanks for watching. Alright guys, so it's kind of crazy to think, but the On3 Performance Turbo kit has been on my car for nearly a year now. And I put it through its paces, I changed some things up here and there. Figured now would be a good time to go ahead and do a new review for you guys to see how the kit's holding up. So let's take the Fox on a little cruise and we'll talk about the car and how everything's holding up with the On3 Performance Turbo kit. And we'll also have a little discussion about things I've done differently since the installation and other things as well. So guys, let's jump in the car and let's go for a spin. Alright guys, so let's talk about a few things here. So, got the kit on the car, and there's a few things you're going to need to consider with the On3 Performance Turbo kit, and one of them is about the actual fitment of the kit itself. Now, the kit itself does actually fit on pretty well, but there are a few modifications you are going to need to do, and the modification I had to do, sorry it's a little windy, modifications I had to do was actually to get the all the cold side piping to fit to where the intercooler did not actually sit below the front bumper cover, or not too forward enough to where I had to lose my fog lights. Of course, this being a GT car, I did want to keep the ability to use the fog lights and everything, so I ended up having to modify the cold side piping just a little bit here in order to make it all work, so I can keep the fog lights and actually still hide the intercooler up in front of the bumper without having to trim the bumper or anything along those lines. So that's something you're going to have to consider. It will work if you decide not to trim any of the piping, and if you do it that way, you probably are going to have to trim your front bumper, especially if you're an LX guy. GT guys might be able to get away with it, but that's just how it had to work for my car. I wanted it to be more of a clean fit. I didn't want it to be a something where you could actually see the intercooler sitting up below the front bumper. I think that looks kind of tacky. So that's probably one thing you're going to have to do with the On3 Performance kit. So just keep that in mind if you do decide to run the kit. One of the things you're probably going to have to do, and I recommend this just with any turbo kit really, is maybe after several heat cycles, maybe a couple weeks after you've been driving the car, just run through the whole kit. You know, of course when it's cold, but run through the whole kit, just make sure everything's still tight. I haven't had any experience with any oil leaks or anything along those lines from the stuff that comes for the turbo itself, the feed line or the drain line. No leaks there. It's been perfectly fine there. So yeah, everything's been great so far on the kit. Haven't really had to worry about any kind of major fixes on it. Mostly just retightening of some clamps and stuff here and there. And even then, I wasn't experiencing any boost leaks or anything along those lines. So it's been working out just fine. All right, so everything's been great so far on the On3 Turbo kit with me personally, and the ceramic coating did help quite a bit with the heat. There's a little bit more you could probably do. We'll talk about that later. But I think it's time to have you guys hear some more boosting up of this car. Let's do it. God, I love those sounds. Probably one of the best things about a turbo kit is hearing the constant spooling of the turbo and then the blow-off valve. Alright, we got clear road ahead. Let's let it eat. Oh man. Okay. Acceleration is really nice in the On3 Turbo kit. I think that has to do with being the ceramic ball bearing turbo. The spool is really quick. You can feel the torque just push you back in the seat. Alright, let's see if we can turn around here. But yeah, you can feel that torque just pushing you back as soon as you're at full spool. Man. As soon as you're at full spool, this thing just goes. It's a freaking rocket ship. All right, guys, let's let this thing cool down for a little bit, and then we'll jump back in the garage and we'll talk more about the On3 Performance Turbo Kit. So we're back here in the garage, and that was a lot of fun, you know, going out and cruising in this thing. But there are a few things I did change up compared to when I first installed the kit. I did kind of mention a few things about the installation fitment and stuff along those lines, and things you might need to modify, especially if we're running an LX car. But a few things that I did change up compared to when I originally purchased the kit was my oil system. I did install a 90-degree oil filter adapter because I still wanted to run the full-size filter. The kit from On3 Performance for the relocation kit, not a big fan. It had a hard time keeping that thing from leaking oil, and even when I thought I had it all sealed up, it still would leak, especially under high pressure situations. So I would ditch that idea altogether. Either piece together your own kit from quality components from other manufacturers, or run a 90-degree elbow and then you can run a full-size filter. The only other option would be to run maybe a stubby filter from like Napa Auto Parts. Those will work too, but if you still want to run the full-size filter, I definitely recommend picking up one of the 90-degree elbows. It's a part that you don't have to worry about any leaks from. Mine doesn't leak a drop of oil, and I think it works great so far, and it looks good under the hood. So I would say definitely recommend doing one of those items or piecing together one of your own oil filter relocation kits. Alright, so sticking with the oil system for just a moment here, something I never really touched on with my setup is how I'm running my, how I'm venting the crankcase pressure and running PCV. So with the crankcase, anytime you supercharge or turbocharge a Fox body, you're going to need to vent that crankcase pressure. Otherwise, you're going to be burning oil, and you don't want to do that because that can lower your octane, cause a whole bunch of problems. You just want to avoid them altogether. So what I'm doing is I'm running a small vent right off the oil filler tube. And this vent here has been working out great so far. I haven't had any oil leaking from it. And I used to run an actual filler neck breather, but that ended up actually leaking some oil on the header, causing it to smoke. So got rid of that and just put the filler cap back on. Ran a small vent here right off the passenger side valve cover. No issues so far. Also for the PCV system, I'm still running a PCV valve. I'm running an SVO PCV valve. It has positive pressure coming in. It actually locks it and seals it off from entering the back of the crankcase. And then whenever there's vacuum, I have a Stita oil separator kit here to catch any blow-by that may come in from the engine vacuum. So that's how I'm running my vent and PCV system. Another major thing to talk about is going to be the maintenance with the On3 Performance Turbo Kit installed. Now, changing the oil and everything, especially with the 90-degree block adapter and stuff along those lines, oil changes are no problem. Essentially, you're changing the oil on the turbo as well because it's an engine feed system. But if you're going to be changing out your spark plug wires, or anything ignition-wise, you are going to have a little bit of issue, especially if you're a bigger guy or you have bigger hands. You're not going to be able to reach around the downpipe. And so what I ended up having to do when I wanted to re-gap my spark plugs and check them and stuff along those lines, I did have to remove the 90-degree coupler there off the throttle body, move the pipe that leads to the fender to that coupler more down towards the fender, and also unbolt the downpipe from the turbo and the exhaust and lift the downpipe up out of the way so I could reach the spark plugs and spark plug wires. So that's another thing. Unless you have smaller hands and you have the right tools, the swivels and stuff to be able to get to the spark plugs and spark plug wires, that's what I end up having to do if I'm going to do any maintenance ignition wise, especially with spark plug wires on the passenger side. So it's another thing to keep in mind with this kit, maintenance wise. You're just going to have to start unbolting some things to get to those parts. Another thing to mention is actually the downpipe itself. The one from On3 Performance actually works pretty good. It does snake down into place next to the engine and everything just fine. It has plenty of clearance on both sides. The only thing is though, it's a little long and it actually makes the exhaust hang pretty low. It actually hangs at probably about maybe an inch and a half to 2 inches too low for my liking, because I want to actually drop the front end of this car a little bit more. If I were to do that right now as it sits, I'd probably be scraping my exhaust everywhere. So running with the On3 Performance wide pipe kit, and of course my catback and this downpipe, the exhaust, especially up front down towards where the downpipe meets that wide pipe kit, it hangs it down about 2 inches too low for my liking. So I am going to modify this downpipe. I'm going to cut about 2 inches off the section and then re-weld everything, and then hopefully that moves my exhaust up and away, so then I can drop the front of this car a little bit more. And plus it's a cleaner look. When you look under the car, you see everything's nice and snug up to the body of the car. That's what I want to go with. So the downpipe, again, fine piece. The O2 bung for your wideband and stuff is just fine. Threads in just fine. It bolts up to the turbo housing just fine, but it's just a little long for my liking, especially if you want like a clean look where everything is snugged up and stuff along those lines. That's the only major issue I have with this downpipe. So again, if you are going to be kind of like me, be a little meticulous like that, you're going to want to modify this downpipe. This part here, we're going to talk about the regulation of boost in one of these kits. Now, I was having an overboosting issue, and then after I got that issue figured out, then I was having a boost creep issue. It seemed to only have really an issue under anything under 10 pounds of boost. When I was initially running the stock gate spring, which is 7 pounds, it seemed to initially hit at 7 pounds of boost, and then it would creep to about 11. So I think the size of the gate itself is a 44 millimeter. Seems to be the right size. It just didn't seem to have the proper flow. And I think it's because of where the placement of the actual wastegate is. It's down on one of the crossover pipes. So I just think it's probably not the most ideal spot for the wastegate, but it still works. Now, if you're wanting to run more than 10 pounds of boost, you should be okay. With my boost controller setting and how everything's running now in this car, I'm hitting 11 pounds of boost, and it seems to be holding it all the way in the upper RPM range. So guys, few things you can do with that. One, just make sure you have the proper setup with your manual boost controller, or you can run a more name brand wastegate like a Turbo Smart or a Tile. That may be a good thing to do, just to invest the extra couple $100 to get a name brand wastegate. Alright guys, this next part I really cannot stress enough. It's going to be about the amount of underhood heat that one of these kits puts out. Now of course this isn't mutually exclusive for the On3 Performance Turbo kit. It's going to be any turbo kit really that you put on your Fox Body Mustang. You have to keep two things in mind. One, you got to be able to let that heat escape from your engine bay, and two, you got to be able to control components and protect components from the excessive heat that the turbo kit will output. A few ways to do that. Having a functional cowl hood is great because it can let heat escape, and also picking up a heat blanket for your turbo, a heat blanket for your downpipe, heat tape, and heat sleeves for your other components. Those are also really nice ways to be able to protect those components, especially for your alternator and your starter. Your starter could experience heat soak from the downpipe because they're so close together. Also with your alternator, with all the wiring and everything that runs up to the alternator and how close it is to the turbo, especially if you're still running it in the stock location, make sure you use heat tape and heat sleeves to protect all those wires so you can prevent issues with your charging system and hard starts when your car is hot. Also with your clutch cable, I definitely recommend that if you're running a manual transmission, definitely pick up a DEI heat sleeve for your clutch cable. And a little trick and tip for you guys, you can take your clutch cable bracket that mounts to the frame rail, take it off the clutch cable, flip it around, and then rebolt it up to the frame rail. That gives you leverage to be able to push the bracket away from the hot side header and move it more towards the frame rail so you can keep your cable further away. And then the heat sleeve and everything's been working great so far on my car. I haven't had any issues with the charging system. The only thing I've experienced so far is a little bit of heat soak on my starter because when the car's been hot and it's only been shut down cooling off for a few minutes, I go to restart it. It has a hard time starting. I do not have my starter protected as of right now, but that is something that I'm going to be doing. So doing those things, and also some spark plug wire boots and stuff along those lines to help protect the excessive heat getting to your spark plug wires, and it helps keep them away from the header flanges and stuff along those lines. Well, I think those things are all necessities if you're running a turbo kit. It does cost a little extra money to buy all those products, but I think it's a necessity and it'll help protect from premature failure, and you'll be happy that you did. One of the things worth noting, especially with my car, I was experiencing some spark flow above 5,500 RPMs. So I went ahead and regapped my spark plugs to 24 thousandths compared to 26 thousandths, and now my car seems to spin up to 6,000 RPMs no problem. I also changed out my spark plug wires. They're the exact same wire, just my other ones were old. They were on there since I bought the car, and they were showing signs of cracking, and they're really showing their age. So I went ahead and just swapped out the exact same wire. I also upgraded my coil to a Screaming Demon coil. So now the car spins up to 6,000 RPMs, no problem, no hesitation, no sputter or anything at the top end, and the car runs great now. So I would say definitely keep an eye out on your ignition components, especially if you're running stock ignition. Make sure you got good components. To summarize everything and put it all together for you in a nice little bow, the On3 Performance Turbo Kit is a great economical way to get into the turbo game, especially for a Fox Body Mustang. If you buy their standard kit, you're looking at right around $1,600, which is hard to beat on the market for a full kit. And of course there would be a few things I'd do differently now compared to how I did it when I first started, especially with the oil system. I could have saved myself $100 there just by not doing the oil filter relocation kit and just doing the 90-degree elbow. So, you know, hindsight's always 20/20, but beyond that, there really hasn't been any problems. There's been a few modifications here and there, but I've still been able to maintain pretty much everything I've had on this car, even when it was naturally aspirated. So guys, way I'd rate it is if I were to do it again, would I actually buy the On3 Turbo kit again? So if I pick up another Project Fox Body and I say I want to turbocharge it, yeah, I would probably do another On3 Turbo kit. So guys, thank you so much for watching this review video here. I hope you got some good information in regards to this. And I hope if you're on the fence about doing an On3 Turbo system, I hope this provides some value to you. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please share, please like and subscribe. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.